ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday here in Dakar and 1 p.m. in Lagos. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink live on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Here is our top stories. Malian Press House pursues dialogue to secure release of 3 journalists in detention.
Our priority remains finding solutions that will lead to the release of our colleagues Chahana Takiu, Abdurrahman Keita and Yusuf Sissoko.
Nigeria introduces tougher penalties for same-sex relations on the new penal code criminalizing homosexuality. Ghanaian government repatriates stranded citizens from Côte d'Ivoire following mass demolitions. And Nigeria marks 26 years of democracy amidst increasing security threats.
We must never take this democracy for granted.
Democracy have done more harm than good, though. I don't even know if the government is still functioning.
Please stay tuned for details of the stories and more.
On the news, this is a more edit.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to all of our listeners across the sub-region and beyond. We'll begin in the central Sahel, precisely in Mali, where pressure is mounting for the release of 3 detained journalists. The Malian Press House says it will prioritize dialogue with the authorities as it intensifies efforts to secure their freedom. The organization believes engagement offers the best chance of achieving a positive outcome in the case. Christopher Ticho gives us the details in this report.
The Malian Press House is continuing its mobilization in support of the release of journalists Chahana Takiu, Abdurrahman Keita and Yusuf Sissoko. Meeting in a General Assembly on Thursday, media professionals reaffirmed their commitment to pursuing dialogue as the preferred path to securing the release of their colleagues. Banjia Godante is the president of the Malian Press House.
Our priority remains finding solutions that will lead to the release of our colleagues Chahana Takiu, Abdurrahman Keita and Yusuf Sissoko. We must pursue their release with responsibility, dignity and unity. Defending press freedom must go hand in hand with safeguarding the credibility of our profession. In this difficult period, our greatest strengths will be our unity and sense of responsibility. By defending journalists, we are also defending the public's rights to free and diverse information.
The Press House has also urged journalists to remain mobilized while maintaining a sense of responsibility.
The Malian Press House calls on all media professionals to remain mobilized, united, and above all, disciplined. It also urges members of the press to avoid any isolated or uncoordinated actions and to continue working together in a spirit of solidarity and responsibility.
The 3 journalists are being prosecuted in separate cases by Mali's National Cybercrime Unit. They face charges including undermining the credibility of the state, insulting a foreign head of state, and offenses deemed to have a regionalist character. Meanwhile, Reporters Without Borders have condemned what it described as arbitrary detentions and is calling for the journalist's release.
That was a report from our Bamako correspondent, Aliu Cham, and voiced by Christopher Aticho. Meanwhile, neighboring Niger has enacted a new penal code that for the first time criminalizes homosexuality. It introduced some of the toughest penalties in the country's legal framework for same-sex relations. The legislation provides for prison sentences for up to 20 years and extends sanctions to those involved in same-sex marriages, as well as individuals and organizations accused of promoting such relationships. Augustine Kohli has more details.
Article 390 of Niger's new penal code imposes severe penalties on same-sex relations classified under the law as acts against nature. Anyone found guilty of engaging in or attempting such acts faces between 5 and 10 years in prison and fines up to 100 million CFA francs. The law also criminalizes the public display of same-sex relationships and attempts to change one's sex. Penalties rise to as much as 20 years in prison when minors under 13 or persons living with disabilities are involved. Article 391 also criminalizes same-sex marriage with prison terms ranging from 10 to 20 years. The sanctions extend to officiants, witnesses, organizers, and others involved in such ceremonies. Ibrahim Idrissa is a member of the Consultative Council for Refundation, Niger's legislative body.
My view is that the law must be applied firmly and rigorously. This is a practice that is rejected by our moral values and customs, the laws of our republic, and by Islam. The law should be enforced in a way that serves as a deterrent to anyone seeking to introduce such practice into our country. That is our position. We simply call on the justice system to do its work and ensure that justice is served.
The new code also targets individuals and organizations accused of financing the promotion of same-sex relations. It further bars judges from granting suspended sentences or considering mitigating circumstances for those convicted under the law.
Our Niamey correspondent Yakuba Bubilai's report there and voiced by Augustine Colley. Elsewhere in Côte d'Ivoire, the demolition of homes in the Kumasi Campement area of Abidjan continues to generate controversy. Former Deputy Mayor Aliou Brou-Jack, who is accused of being behind the exercise, remains wanted by the authorities after prosecutors denied granting any authorization for the demolitions. As investigations continue, civil society groups are calling on the government to engage affected communities through dialogue. Abdurrahman Chez, who is the communications officer of the Convention of Ivorian Civil Society, explains the group's position.
The authorities must urgently engage in constructive dialogue with the affected communities and civil society actors. Such engagement is essential to finding a balanced solution that addresses security concerns and urban development while safeguarding the right and welfare of the people. We therefore call on the authorities to put in place clear mechanisms for compensation, where possible, as well as the relocation and resettlement of affected families, particularly the most vulnerable. While development is important, it should not come at the expense of the fundamental right of citizens. Our hope is that meaningful dialogue between the affected communities and authorities and civil society organizations will lead to a fair and balanced solution, one that ensures those affected feel heard, protected and adequately supported.
Abdurrahman Cisse is a communications officer of the Convention of Ivorian Civil Society.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
The Ghanaian government says it is repatriating more than 300 citizens stranded by a mass demolition exercise in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. The affected Ghanaians lost their homes and livelihoods after structures in the Port Boyd municipality were pulled down. In a statement, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs says efforts are underway to ensure their safe return and eventual compensation. Nadia Ditete has more details in this report.
The government of Ghana has begun the repatriation of 327 Ghanaians affected by an ongoing demolition exercise in the Port Boyd municipality of Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. According to a statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, many of the affected nationals were residing in communities targeted by the demolitions and were left stranded after losing their homes, sources of income and access to accommodation. The ministry says 228 returnees arrived in Ghana on Thursday, June 11, while arrangements have been completed for the remaining Ghanaians to return home today, Friday. Government says it has provided buses and trucks free of charge to transport both the returnees and their belongings back to Ghana safely. The Foreign Affairs Ministry also revealed that Ivorian authorities have indicated their willingness to compensate those affected by the demolition exercise. It added that Ghana's diplomatic mission in Abidjan will continue engaging with authorities to ensure the promised compensation reaches the victims. The government says it remains committed to the welfare and protection of Ghanaians abroad and will continue supporting the return and reintegration of those affected. The ministry also expressed appreciation to the authorities of Côte d'Ivoire and other stakeholders for their cooperation in facilitating the repatriation process. For WDR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
Let's now focus on Nigeria, as today, June 12, reminds citizens of the country's democracy journey and the sacrifices made in the struggle for civilian rule. 26 years after the return to democracy, questions remain about how much progress has been made in translating democratic ideals into better living conditions for citizens. In this special report, WDL correspondent Yechin Sasicha examines how ordinary Nigerians assess the state of the nation's democracy and the expectations they still hold for governance, inclusion, and service delivery.
The point is that we must never take this democracy for granted.
For a business owner, democracy may mean being able to keep her shop open because there is electricity. For a parent, it may mean finding affordable healthcare when a child falls sick. For a teacher, it may be the hope for a better future for the next generation. And for many Nigerians, it means asking a simple question: has democracy improved our lives?
Democracy have done more harm than good, though. I don't even know if the government is still functioning.
I appreciate the freedom to vote and express my opinions, but challenges like unemployment, insecurity, and the high cost of living remain.
The media and the civil society have become more active in holding leaders accountable.
To an extent, Nigeria still has some serious catching up to do.
So much more needs to be done to improve the lives of citizens.
Nigeria, we hail thee. The journey to democracy was not an easy one. Following years of military rule, Nigeria returned to democratic governance on May 29, 1999, ushering in what is now the country's longest uninterrupted period of civilian leadership. Democracy Day, now observed on June 12, also honors the struggle and sacrifices of those who fought for democratic freedoms, inspired by the annulled 1999 presidential election, widely regarded as one of the freest in the nation's history. More than 2 decades later, many Nigerians say the ideals of accountability, inclusion, and improved quality of life remain as important today as they were then. Founder of the Network of People with Disabilities, Lois Auta, says,
"We want to see the implementation of the Nigerian Disability Act, plus funding opportunities for persons with disabilities, accessibility, audit of all public buildings, transport, website, inclusion in all government policies, budget, and data."
Healthcare is another measure many Nigerians use when assessing democracy. Human rights lawyer and patients' rights advocate Ebenezer Egwatu says access to quality healthcare should not depend on where a person lives or how much money they have.
Access to quality healthcare is a democratic entitlement and not a privilege.
Democracy is often measured by more than elections. Political commentator Kunle Adeniyi believes democracy is measured by how well it responds to the needs of citizens.
Over time, have we seen these services being delivered to the people? Now, when you look at it, in a situation where people live in communities and they don't have access to quality education, of course, what does that tell you? It tells you that you are failing in delivering the purpose of democracy, which the people fought for.
We are happy. We are happy. Democracy, welcome to Nigeria.
26 years later, Nigerians are still holding on to the promise of democracy, not just for the promise of voting, but the promise of opportunity, the promise of inclusion, and the promise that government will work for the people it was elected to serve. For WADR, Yechini Sasetu in Abuja.
Meanwhile, Action Aid International marked 54 years of global operations with a high-level gathering in Dakar on Thursday. During an official ceremony, policymakers, development partners, civil society leaders, and beneficiaries reflected on the organization's impact across communities. The event highlighted more than 5 decades of work promoting human rights, gender equality, climate resilience, and social justice, while also examining the challenges facing vulnerable communities across West Africa. Veronica Njai completes the story.
For many stakeholders, the event was an opportunity to reflect on how Action Aid's interventions have transformed lives. Daysar is a beneficiary from Senegal's Saloum region.
ActionAid has helped us because we are from an area deeply impacted by the effect of climate change. It caused us so many problems, and irregular migration was seen as the only way to better our lives. ActionAid helped us realize that migration should be done legally through sensitization and aid for the young people.
Aja Antanjai is also a farmer and beneficiary from Senegal's Tambacounda region.
The women in my community are very thankful to ActionAid. They have helped us know about our rights as women. This includes what gender-based violence is, the role women can play in society, the autonomy of women, access to land, access to seeds, and so forth.
While celebrating these successes, ActionAid says significant challenges remain. ActionAid Senegal Country Director Kaita Silla stressed the need for greater support for women's rights organizations, especially in the Sahel.
We are thinking more and more how to creatively fund women's rights organizations generally, for them to be able to do their work. And the funding will include also providing the safe space for them to be able to continue to do the work.
As the organization reflects on more than 5 decades of work, ActionAid International Secretary General Ato Larok says it's a time of reflection for the organization.
We are telling our story of success. We are telling our story of challenges. We are telling our story of triumphs and trials. But most importantly, we are telling our story of the future.
As ActionAid marks its 54th anniversary, the organization says it remains committed to supporting communities in shaping a more inclusive and sustainable future.
Veronique and Jai Valda report. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar and online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Malian Press House pursues dialogue to secure release of 3 journalists in detention. Niger introduces tougher penalties for same-sex relations under new penal code criminalizing homosexuality. Ghanaian government repatriates stranded citizens from Côte d'Ivoire following mass demolitions. And Nigeria marks 26 years of democracy amid increasing security threats. Still ahead, we do have a guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Don't forget, you can listen to us live on wadr.org and do follow our live streamings on YouTube and Facebook. A civil society organization, Gambia Participators, expressed concern over delays in operationalizing the Gambia's Anti-Corruption Commission and the country's persistent electricity crisis. The group says the failure to swear in commissioners already approved by the National Assembly is hindering efforts to strengthen accountability and combat corruption. It also argues that recurring power outages continue to disrupt households, businesses, and public services. WDL Sangdana Mendy gives us the details.
Speaking at a press conference on Thursday, Gambia Participate noted that 3 anti-corruption commissioners confirmed by lawmakers in December 2025 have yet to be sworn into office, preventing the commission from becoming fully operational. The organization urged the government to expedite the process. It also called for urgent measures to address the country's worsening electricity challenges, warning that prolonged power outages continue to affect livelihoods and economic activity. The group says both issues required immediate government action. Marnyang is founder of Gambia Participate.
All the public statements that is given by the government that this is mere technical problem is not a mere technical problem. This is utter resource of negligence and corruption. Not an allegation, but proven utter negligence and corruption. At least if it's coming from civil society, they will say these are just noisemakers. If it's coming from you, the journalists, they will just say these are oppositions. This is not coming from me. It's not coming from media. This is coming from the State-Owned Enterprises Commission that was established by this administration.
As concerns continue to mount, a group known as Gambians Against Looted Assets has formally requested a permit from the Inspector General of Police to stage a protest over the country's electricity and water shortages. The demonstration is scheduled for June 19, 2026. The planned protest follows continued nationwide load shedding by the National Water and Electricity Company, with some communities communities experiencing power cuts lasting several hours each day. For Newslink on Estafige Democracy Radio, I am Sangdana Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, our guest this afternoon is Abdraman Chez, Communications Officer for the Convention of Ivorian Civil Society. He speaks about the demolition operations in the Kumasi Campmore district, which continue to spark controversy. This comes as former Deputy Mayor Aliu Brujak, who believed to be behind the operations, is still wanted by Ivorian authorities. Take a listen.
What we know first and foremost is that this situation affects the population, but we must also recognize the state's need to protect them. So it's true that the safety of individuals and disaster prevention remain a priority for the state. But as a civil society actor, we believe that this operation must respect three important points. First, human dignity. Second, transparency. And finally, social justice. Therefore, the affected populations, those concerned by this situation, must be informed beforehand. We must therefore seek to truly understand them, then advance and support them throughout the process.
We are talking about more than 65,000 people who are now homeless in Kumasi camp. What exactly is the situation on the ground?
Why is this situation concerning us all? Because it's currently the rainy season. There's also a worry about how these people will manage to find shelter and protection from the rain, especially given the flooding in some areas. That's the concern. So we are currently assessing what civil assistance can do.
The public prosecutor now claims that he, Brujak, who is allegedly behind these demolitions, had no legal authorization, and yet the operation took place in the presence of law enforcement and agents from the Abidjan Autonomous District. How do you explain that a demolition of this scale could have been carried out with the support of public institutions if it was completely illegal?
No, actually, it's about understanding how things were initially set up so that this situation could not have occurred in the first place. You see, so it has a fundamentally legal aspect. When you mention the public prosecutor, it falls within a legal context, so it needs to be analyzed. We are not going to comment on all of this first. We are going to try to document everything that has been done, and based on that documentation, we can then comment on certain points, particularly, of course, the one concerning the issue you raised.
Now that the Ivorian state claims not to be behind these demolitions, where exactly is this flaw that led to these operations?
Okay, the problem lies in the area of responsibility. Responsibility is very important, so we need to understand what it represents, what it truly is. What is responsibility? I will explain it simply. Using a civil society approach, it's acting with full knowledge of the facts. When we don't act with full knowledge of the facts, there's a problem of responsibility. So responsibility is very important. So if everyone properly assumed their responsibilities, acting with full knowledge of the facts I have indicated, then we certainly wouldn't be in this situation today.
Abdurrahman Chez, Communications Officer for the Convention of Ivorian Civil Society. All right, when you hear that bit, you know that is the World Cup season, and it kicked off yesterday with intriguing matches. However, some players and coaches do have a date with history in this edition. Several records could fall in this World Cup, and some have been detained for years. Among the players who can make history, Cristiano Ronaldo, figures prominently at 41 years. He continues to defy time. To tell me about this is Augustine. Augustine, Cristiano Ronaldo, 41 years old, still running like a strong horse.
It's not easy to be at that age and running because football is about the energy. And so, but something interesting, if the Portuguese striker scores during this World Cup, well, he will become the oldest goal scorer in the history of the World Cup. And a record currently held by his compatriot Pipi, who scored at the age of 39 in the run-off of the 16 against Switzerland at the last World Cup in Qatar.
Yeah.
But Ronaldo is not the only veteran veteran already in search of a record. You have Luka Modric, the former Ballon d'Or holder, and Bosnian striker Edin Dzeko, both at the age of 40, they are also in the running race.
Well, we also have the captain of the Argentine squad, the defending champions, Lionel Messi. Tell me about this legend. He could also make some good history here in this tournament.
He currently has 13 goals in the World Cup. He can never be left out of these kinds of discussion. He is only 3 goals away from Miroslav Klose's all-time record. In 2014, the German dethroned Brazilian striker Ronaldo in that Germany's crushing victory over Brazil that they won 7-1 in the semi-finals. However, the Argentine has a serious competitor. Remember, this young kid, one would say, is Kylian Mbappe. At the age of 27 years old, the Frenchman already has 11 goals in the World Cup. That tells you a lot, and that he has the potential to go further. The two players could also find themselves in another battle, and that of the number of finals they've played. The Brazilian Cafu played 3 of them already, but if the Argentine or the Frenchman reach the final again, one of them could equal that performance.
No, Augustine, let's come back to the African side. You see any possible record? Starting off with the match that was played yesterday, the opener, where South Africa was beaten 2-0. But are we expecting to see other records set by African team?
For sure, we have the potential to see many of them who have the potential rather. But the main concern is one Yan Jomande, 19-year-old Ivorian striker, is one of the players who can dream of becoming the youngest Adidas Ballon d'Or, the award given to the best player of the tournament. So at 21 years old, the emblematic player of the Selecao Ronaldo won his distinction at the 1998 World Cup in France. But the competition promises to be tough for the Ivorian Nogest. The 18-year-old Spaniard Lamine Yamal is there.
All right, yeah.
He's been spoken about. Already considered one of the best young players in the world. He is also running this race.
Well, Augustine, this conversation will not be complete if we don't talk about the coaches. I know there are some records that also been set and broken or created by these coaches. And among them, we're talking about Didier Deschamps. Do you think it could be beaten, or he's going to set another record in this tournament?
You know, football is sometimes unpredictable, but once you are lucky, you predict things happen. But with 19 World Cup games, he is only 6 behind the Germans Helmut Schon's 25, and a 50-year-old record. Imagine that. A run to the quarterfinals will allow him to equal him and beat him if he goes further. The French coach can also become the most successful coach in the history of the World Cup, and that is 3 wins will be enough for him to surpass the 16 victories of the former German coach.
Indeed, Augustine, I want to thank you here as we look forward to having more matches in the coming days. Just before we go, your take about yesterday's match, South Africa and Mexico. I mean, we just can't stop talking about that match. It also set a record of 3 red cards in an opener of the World Cup.
Yep. It was an all-odds match because there was too many discussions about what are the chances for South Africa. But looking at how they perform, I think one would have expected more from them, given the hype.
The hype was something else.
Yeah. So I don't know what will happen. Was it fear or whatsoever, or perhaps Mexico also prepared because they are one of the hosts, so they should have performed like they did.
Yeah.
But that wasn't an encouraging performance.
I know in one of our packages, in the build up to this World Cup, we talked about, the local boys at the global stage, and perhaps what they play in South Africa is not what they are seeing at the global stage.
even looking at the fans, when you arrive in the stadium and you look around, the noise.
Yes.
I mean, that support
it's threatening.
It's not easy.
It's
not easy. But I mean, hopefully, if they try, because we have South Korea also playing Czech Republic. It was a very intensive match. So to qualify from that zone, they will have to really beat South Korea or Czech Republic to ensure that they qualify from the group stage.
Augustine, thank you so much for your time. And that has been Sport News. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Mauro Ju for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms: X, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn at WADR English. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Baft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to Newslink.